I absolutely love all the flowers that are in the garden right now. Hi, I'm Rachel. Welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. There's been a lot of new faces here, so welcome. I'm in South Carolina. This is zone 7B, and I'm gardening in the yard of my rental house. And I have two adorable black cats. This one is Draco and the other one is Kada. They like to hang out with me in the garden. And this week I really want to show you guys all of the different flowers I've got going on in the garden. They are not flowers that I've planted as flowers, but they're very, very cool. And I think they're probably flowers that a lot of gardeners don't get to see because these are vegetables that people don't usually let go to flower. So in my garden tours, I try to always go in the same order so everybody remembers where everything is. This first trellis over here is where my fava beans are and where my tomatoes will eventually be. And last week we got to see the first little baby fava beans, and this week we are getting pretty close to our first harvest of fava beans. And if you've never seen a fava bean flower, they are just absolutely gorgeous little things. I currently have one fava bean recipe that I really like, but I would love to hear recommendations from you guys on what you think I should cook with my fava beans when they are finally harvestable. Look at all the flowers on this plant. Each one of these is a potential fava bean. Look at all of those. Y'all, I've been waiting all winter for these fava beans and I am so excited. So the other side of this row is where I have had a few lettuces right here on the edge of the weeds. I've got a couple spinach plants here. They are finally big enough where I've been pulling leaves off pretty much as I want for salads. And I can't pull like an entire spinach salad, but I can pull enough leaves off of each lettuce that I have to make a full and really beautifully diverse salad. Checking in on this little mint plant here by the path. It is definitely coming back. And some of you have mentioned to me that this is pretty invasive as a plant, and I would say yes, you are entirely right. And it is quite a risk I'm taking putting it in the ground near my garden. Mint is one of those plants that it'll send the roots down and then they come back up somewhere else, and that's another plant. And that's one of the main ways that it propagates. And so having it near the garden, well, it would eventually take over the whole garden if I didn't spend a lot of time cutting it back. But I did plant it in this spot because it does that a little bit. You see I have this path here, and I have a mint plant here and a thyme plant here. And both of those are kind of known for taking over a little bit. And so I'm hoping that instead of mulching this area every year, I can have a bit of a living functional mulch from my mint and my thyme. And I think that would not only be beautiful, but just a more efficient use of the space than covering it in wood chips. Oh, hello, Draco. Stepping back to check in on the garlic and onions. Both of them are looking really good, but the garlic is obviously looking much, much better. I mean, look at how thick that is. I think the garlic harvest is going to be amazing this year. And the onion harvest is still going to be quite good. How many leaves are we up to? We're up to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 leaves. You want to wait, ideally, until you have about 13 leaves on your onions. And I'm looking at maybe about a couple more months until these are harvestable. The thing with onions is you have to wait until the sunlight during the day is enough to trigger them to bulb. That's why there are such things as short day onions and long day onions. The long day ones need longer days to be triggered to bulb. So here in the south, where we don't get as much of a difference in the length of our days, I'm growing short day onions. And those will be triggered to bulb soon-ish, but I think they'll have time to put on plenty of leaves before then because it's starting to warm up. We have a few days getting up into the 80s this week. It's pretty exciting. And right now I don't have much growing in between the onions and the garlic. Previously I had some large brassicas like Brussels sprouts and broccoli and stuff that kind of failed over the winter. But if you notice, there's some space in here in between the large clumps, and that is for hopefully the eggplants and peppers going in probably less than a month now. I usually wait till May to put those in this area, and that is coming up pretty fast. My one cabbage that survived the winter and my late planting of everything, it's looking really nice. I pulled a couple of leaves and chopped them up into salads. They're a little tough, but they're still very edible, and I think once I notice the first signs of this potentially bolting, I'll pull the whole middle out and eat that and then compost the rest, because, well, I mean, the leaves that look good out here could probably be cooked down, added to something you would add kale to, like a zuppa toscana. But these little leaves in here are still quite tender. And the only other thing I have in between all of this stuff is some lettuces, and I thought these were turnips, but I think this might actually be a rutabaga because of the color. I'm not sure though. I know rutabagas can handle slightly colder temperatures than turnips can on average. And I had some more over here that died when we had our cold snap, and this one pulled through. And I definitely planted some turnips and some rutabagas, but I didn't label which were which. So that might be why this one survived. And I also every week show you guys the difference between this lettuce that got covered during our cold snap. Oh, Kate is out here now. This lettuce that got covered during our cold snap and this one that didn't. This one obviously pulled through and is making edible lettuce for me. But this one is obviously still doing so much better. For those of you who are new here, it got down to about 20 Fahrenheit very suddenly after it had been warm here for a while. And it wasn't like it was past our last frost date or anything, but it had been warm for like at least a couple of weeks. So I think the plants were very not prepared for how cold it got so fast. And I covered a lot of my plants that I could with bed sheets. That's why some of those fava beans look so good. And I also covered that lettuce with literally one of those clay pots that has the hole on the top. I didn't even cover the hole. I just put the pot on top of it. And you can see the difference it made in how much it protected it from that cold snap. It just needed a little bit of help. And so I keep telling you guys this to reiterate to you, because I didn't understand when I started gardening how much of a difference something like that could make. This kale here at the front was also covered, and all the other kales that were not covered actually died, which is unusual because kale is usually such a cold hardy plant. But this one I've also been pulling from for salads. This is kaleidoscope kale from Experimental Farm Network, and it is beautiful. If we look up here at the trellis, the peas are taking off. Look at that. I think I might actually get some peas from these. It'll probably also be May until I plant beans on this trellis anyway, so they've got a few weeks. If they don't produce for me, I won't really lose sleep over it. You know, peas are nice, but they're not really my favorite thing, and it's just been kind of a learning experience in when exactly is the right time to plant those in my area. These radishes here are getting big pretty fast, I would say. Like, you can see this one almost big enough to harvest. This is an icicle radish. I don't think all of these are icicle radishes, but like I've said before, I'm probably going to pull some of these and then leave most of them to go to seed, because letting brassicas go to seed, theoretically, I haven't tested it, helps ward off some garden pests. And if you've been with me for a while, you might remember my radish jungle from the last house I was at, and there was like no pests in that garden. Well, not zero, but like I didn't get hornworms on my tomatoes or anything like that. And they were grown up kind of in the middle of these radishes that I had let go to seed, and they were getting kind of giant and cool. I'll insert a video of that for you to see it if you haven't seen it. But I want to try and minimize pests as much as possible in supernatural ways. And so I'm not looking into sprays or anything like that. I really want to kind of create a cohesive environment where things kind of balance each other out. Look at these beautiful yellow flowers. This is one of the ones I'm talking about where I think most people have never seen a turnip go to seed. A lot of brassicas make these pretty yellow flowers. Some of them will make white or purple flowers. And you can kind of see the seed pods starting to form down here. They will fill up with little seeds and then dry out, and at that point I'll be able to harvest the seeds. Now with radishes, they'll make a fatter pod that's really great for eating, but I found that turnips generally, the pod is a little like thin and not super nice to eat, but I guess technically still edible. Back here behind the turnips are my beets, which never bulbed up, and that's okay. I've been eating the leaves in my salads. I'm really interested to see what these look like when they go to seed, because I've never seen a beet go to flower before. I bet it's going to be really, really cool. This is a great reason to let things flower in your garden, even if you have no use for the flowers. They need to know that this is a place where they can come for flowers and food. And as they're waking up at the start of spring, I want them to know that this garden is where they want to be, so that I have plenty of pollinators for when I'm growing all of my peppers and tomatoes and eggplants and beans and everything else that needs to be pollinated. There they are next to each other. I know it's hard to tell which one's which. Cada and Draco. Cada's a little bigger, but I think she's just muscular. I don't think she's fat. So moving on to this last row over here, you can see the flowers on my Brussels sprout have finally opened up. Very similar to the turnips, but just like sized up, much larger. Another flower I'm kind of excited about that isn't from any vegetable is this one. This is crimson clover. I had planted it because I wanted it in my yard. I would rather have clover than grass. And I'm just now starting to see the first ones flower, and I think it'd be so cute to just have little red flowers all over my yard. So in the raised bed, the cilantro, it's even more obvious that it's going to seed. You see how it's getting real tall and kind of bunched up here at the top? It's about to flower. And it's still perfectly edible at this phase. It's perfectly edible after it flowers too, but once it flowers, it stops making a lot of big leaves and really just makes a flower stalk. And so you stop getting leaves from it, and that's probably the biggest issue with trying to grow cilantro into the spring, which is why I'm looking at cilantro alternatives that like to grow in the summer. The parsley is also going to flower soon, and that is also fine for me. I don't use very much parsley, and I mostly just want the plant to get back up and healthy because it was knocked back pretty bad during the winter. And if we check in on the berry patch real quick, something has definitely been digging here, and I don't think it's my cats. My cats dig, they leave like little piles like this. This is a very large pile, and there are some dogs who run around the neighborhood. So I'm thinking that might be it. And I don't really know what to do about that. But the blueberries still look okay. They're at least not killing my plants. And my little strawberry is starting to put on some new leaves. This is a June bearer, so it won't bear till June. But hopefully it spreads out. I couldn't afford to buy a whole lot of strawberries, so I'm starting with one, and we'll see how many extra I end up with next year. Alrighty, and that is all I have for you guys today. If you want to keep up with the garden, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It's only a couple of weeks until tomatoes go in, and then after that it'll be peppers and eggplants and beans, and then suddenly the garden is going to be huge again. So if you want to keep up with how that's going, hit subscribe. You'll get a new garden tour every Wednesday and hopefully 2 other videos during the week that will help you learn how to garden or learn new things about garden or inspire you in your gardening journey, because that's really what I want to do, is show you guys what I'm doing, teach you about what I'm doing, and show you what a real garden looks like, mistakes and all. Alrighty guys, thank you so much for watching. Until next time, I wish you happy gardening.